Welcome, everyone, to From the Ground Up. We are a Grit Daily sponsored podcast where we talk to entrepreneurs about the companies that they're working on and their missions in the world. And the hope is that we can deliver some good information to folks out there who want to learn from entrepreneurs and run their businesses better. Today, I'm joined by Bobby Gray, who is the founder of Texitcoin. How are you doing, Bobby?
Hey, John, thanks for having me today. Doing
It's
great.
great. It's great to have you. You're the founder of Texitcoin. Tell us about what Texitcoin is. Tell us about your background, too, all in one big
Sure.
answer.
Well, Texitcoin is like a cryptocurrency time machine. It's going back to the early days of Bitcoin, back when it was pure and it was all about getting a digital, decentralized peer-to-peer currency to take root. It's a second chance. I think that crypto has really lost its way. Now it's very goofy. Some of the top coins in the world are, things that people laugh about. And so Texacoin is here to help bring crypto back to its main original purpose of peer-to-peer digital currency. My background that I brings us to this conversation today is all about honest money. I started the American Open Currency Standard back in 2008, which coincidentally is the same year that somebody else on planet Earth, going by, Satoshi Nakamoto, launched Bitcoin. The big difference between my group and Bitcoin is that Satoshi went digital and I went physical. And now here we are, 17 years later, and it's very obvious that Satoshi won. Bitcoin is a multi-trillion-dollar industry today. Gold and silver, physical coins, they've been around for a long time, and I'm sure they'll be around for a long time. But they don't have nearly the global impact today that the cryptocurrency industry does. And so it took me a long time to see the error of my ways. I don't think that I did anything wrong, but I certainly didn't do it as well as the Bitcoin community did. So I got totally out of gold and silver, sold my factory, went all in on crypto. And I've been around crypto for a long time, but it wasn't until 2023 that I finally saw the writing on the wall, got out of precious metals manufacturing, and got completely into crypto when I built my own rocket ship that I call Texitcoin.
Okay, so wow, you had your own factory for gold
Yeah,
for that. You said, wow,
a couple of them all over the world: Dallas, Singapore, Thailand, and another one in McKinney.
how did
So
that
I've been
prepare?
making coins for a long time.
How did that prepare you for Texitcoin? How did that sort of lay the groundwork
Well,
for
there are
where you're
two
now?
parts to that. One is the experience in the realm of alternative and complementary currencies. In 2012, I did two things that kind of stand out. One is I testified in U.S. Congress in front of the U.S. House Financial Services Subcommittee on Domestic Monetary Policy, and I was able to give them the free market perspective to what money is and why the government should stay out of the money game. And this is long before anybody ever really heard of Bitcoin and crypto in the first place. So that same year, I also created the original Bitcoin coin, which you've probably seen a time or two. It looks like
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah.
And it's probably the most famous coin in the world today. So I've been around this alternative money conversation for a very long time on the physical side as a manufacturer, and also on the currency trading side as somebody that's actually working with communities to get them to think outside of the dollar. And it's easier said than done, especially when you're dealing with physical coins, that have an element to them that requires them to go really far out of their way to find them and trade them and make change for them. And that's really where crypto wins. It's just easy to use. These are digital tools of our time.
Yeah. Well, okay. So now that we have a little bit about your background, let's go a little bit more onto what you're working on today. You kind of
Sure.
went in all the way on crypto, 2023, that kind of thing. You mentioned this earlier. You feel like crypto had lost its way to some extent. That has to do with it not being as decentralized as maybe it should be. Talk to me
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, well, we were chatting before we started about consensus, and that was really the final nail in the coffin about how the big banks and the big money has shown up in the crypto conversation in a big way. And you think about how Bitcoin set out to disrupt these financial institutions and create an alternative that allows people to exchange value peer to peer. We don't have to go through a central issuing authority to do that. And then you go out to these gigantic Bitcoin conferences and you hear things like Jamie Dimon JP Morgan Chase is the keynote speaker at the event. And you're like, wait a minute, weren't these the guys that we were trying to get away from in the first place? And so, it's a double-edged sword, because crypto becoming a mainstream financial asset is incredibly useful, because now you don't get your bank account closed when you say crypto, down at the local Chase. But at the same time, it means that the same institutions we tried to disrupt are now, right back dead center in the conversation. So part of it's good because it gets people rich. That is what gets people excited and engaged in the crypto space. The other part of it is, hey, we had this financial technology that allows us to send value from one side of the world to the other almost instantaneously without going through a bank. That's impossible to counterfeit any amount, large or small. And we let that technology slip through our fingers. We had it. The people had it. And now it's been kind of rounded up by the, the big banks and foreign nations. So Texitcoin is here to remind people, first and foremost, of what this was supposed to be. It was supposed to be money by the people and for the people. And I think the banks know that they're coming up on extinction. I think this cryptocurrency conversation has become so large and so mainstream now that we're starting to question whether or not we actually need the banks to be involved in currency. Banks serve a purpose, but they seem to have engaged the idea of controlling the money supply as well. And those two things couldn't be more opposite on the, the value and trading spectrum.
Okay, yeah, a lot of things to talk about here. So how does, I wanted to ask you about, whether or not some of these alternative currencies, whether you felt they were still viable. And is Texitcoin kind of an alternative currency? Or
Sure.
It sounds like it is. Talk to me about that.
Well, when you say alternative currencies, I'm going to assume you're talking about Bitcoin. And the reality is that 99% of all crypto traded today isn't used as money. It's people speculating online, more like gambling or at a casino. They're trading baseball cards, digital baseball cards. They're trading things, trying to make money on it. They're not using it to pay for goods and services. And the reason behind that, primarily, at least for Bitcoin, is that it's so expensive to use. It's so slow that it's all but impossible to use it to buy a cup of coffee. When your coffee's $4 and the transaction fee is $8, it just doesn't work. When you're sitting there 25 minutes waiting for the transaction to go through, it just doesn't work. And so I'll never forget my first Bitcoin transaction back in 2017. I waited 24 hours and the money never made it. It just zeroed out. A day later, the network was so congested, the network fees were so high that it just didn't go through. And, anything that's going to be used as money has to be fast. It has to be easy, has to be inexpensive, or the market's just not going to use it. So Bitcoin today has really become more like digital gold, which is okay. There's a market for that and people buy it and sell it. So which one of the cryptos out today is really being engaged as a currency? Who's the champion in the cryptocurrency space today that's furthering the mission of using cryptocurrency as money? I don't really see anybody out there filling that role. And back to your question about what is it that I've done over the years that has contributed to the success of this project so far? I'm the guy that's the champion of honest money. I just was doing it the wrong way with gold and silver and copper coins for a long time. And that was based on my commitment to having something real and tangible and valuable that a person could hold in their hand to use as money. And what I failed to really comprehend is that tangible doesn't mean valuable. You can have intangible things that are valuable. And when I looked at crypto and I was, really fair with evaluating what properties of money it really holds, that's when it hit me like a ton of bricks. But I'm the guy that knows how to actually get people to use an alternative currency. It's not easy, but there are a couple tricks to it. And I'm really excited now to pull those tricks back out and use them with a currency that's so much faster, so much easier than things were in the past with my gold and silver coins.
I would love to hear what some of those tricks are. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I'll give you an example. Back in 2011, we launched a project called Coin of the Realm. And the idea was to use half-ounce copper tokens as tickets inside of fairs and festivals. And the idea worked extremely well. It went over very well. But there were two challenges with it. One was the physicality. You got to be able to vend hundreds of thousands of millions of tokens to the people that are coming to the fair and festival, right? And that just takes time and infrastructure. You got to manufacture the coins. You got to sell them to the audience. You got to buy them back from the vendors. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. And back in those days, we were competing against digital anyway. We were just trying to convince people that it was more fun to use physical coins. And of course it is, but you lose speed. What you gain in novelty, you offset with, speed and inconvenience. But the other thing that we found as we were engaging these communities that had fairs and festivals coming to town was that they really wanted to have the possibility of those coins, that medium of exchange, being useful in town after the fair leaves. So the Renaissance Festival shows up, 100,000 people go out there, they dress up, they get into character, they trade money for turkey legs. And then the next day, all that money's gone, or a week later, whatever it is. And so what the community is saying is, how can we make it so that when somebody's walking out of the event and they've got these extra paper tickets, they're not looking to spend those on extra funnel cakes and turkey legs. They don't need them. They just know that the tickets are worthless if they don't get rid of them right now. What if we had something durable that could be used as a community currency so that some of that money sticks around the community after the festival leaves? And so it works. It works very well. And we found in our historical experience that about 10% of the money actually ends up staying, which doesn't sound like a big amount. But if you say 100,000 people times $50 per person, you're at $5 million. 500,000 of that sticks around and continues to circulate in the community after the festival leaves. That's a big amount, especially if that happens 2 or 3 or 4 times a year. And so we're starting at the same place we left off back in those days. And the only difference now is we're using digital tools. The only thing that makes it significant is that instead of building it on top of Bitcoin or Ethereum or something like that, that is primarily now controlled by overseas mining operations, we're building it on the Made in America Texitcoin blockchain. And so that's going over very well, especially with the small communities across the state of Texas that are engaging the age-old concept of a community currency today.
Oh, great. So explain that a little bit more, that part that you just hit on there towards the end with
Sure.
The mining that's happening in other countries, and you're trying to bring it back to the United States. Elaborate how you're doing that with Texitcoin.
Yeah, so imagine my surprise when I finally say, I'm out of coin manufacturing. I don't know which crypto I'm going to throw my hat in the ring for, but I know I'm done with gold and silver coins. So I start researching them. Bitcoin's too slow. It's too expensive. Litecoin doesn't really have any leadership. This coin, that coin, the other coin. But they're all now primarily mined in China. So you've got 2 types of coins. You got what we call proof of work, and you've got proof of stake. Yeah. Proof of work means that you can mine it. Well, China manufactures the chips that you need for the supercomputers to mine it. So it would make sense that China's got a huge advantage when it comes to mining. Okay, well then what's proof of stake? Proof of stake is whoever's holding the largest quantity of the coin gets to make the decisions on where the network goes. Well, the biggest exchange in the world is Binance. This is an Asian focused exchange. They don't even do business in the US. So the biggest exchange, which is where most people store their crypto, is Binance. Now all of a sudden they're controlling the proof of stake coins. So I said, how many people know this? XRP is another great example. People say, well, XRP is going to be the next big crypto coin, maybe even bigger than Bitcoin. XRP is a centrally controlled coin. It's not even mineable. It's 100% pre-mined, and most people have no idea. So when I started evaluating all the different possibilities, I said, I got to make my own. Now that happens, of course, thousands of times a day. Every day you hear about some new scammy, meme pump and dump coin that's coming out. And so, we're up against that. Why didn't you just jump onto this one or that one? Well, there are problems with the other ones that are out there. And we have an opportunity to do something that was, not really popular at the time when we were talking about building a crypto that was made for America, the make crypto in America great again conversation. But we said, look, Texas is where all this energy is abundant and inexpensive. Let's exclusively build the infrastructure, the digital currency mine, the actual hardware, the physical computers. Let's exclusively build that network in Texas. We've got cheap power. We've got our own culture. We've got our own grid. We've got all these advantages. Everybody knows the Texas story, even around the world. When I lived in Asia for 7 years, it was, well known about Western culture and Texas's independent spirit. So I said, look, let's build a Texas blockchain. Now, sure enough, a couple months go by and all of a sudden everyone in the world is talking about, the possibility of eliminating capital gains taxes on made in America cryptos. I'm like, they're talking about us. They don't
Yeah.
know it yet, but they're talking Texitcoin. What other cryptos are made in America? So really the realization that crypto is now primarily controlled by Asian, countries and entities was the wake up call that I needed to realize that I had to make my own. I had to do it here. And I'm the only guy I think that's uniquely qualified with the very interesting things that I've done over my career to actually do that and be taken seriously. Starting my own currency in 2008, testifying in Congress, making the
Yeah.
original Bitcoin coin, manufacturing these cold storage wallets that the industry uses to keep crypto safe offline where it can't get hacked and won't go out of business. So there are a lot of things that we've got going for us. And I think that's what allowed us to jump so far ahead so fast. We still have a long way to go, but we're off to a great start.
Talk about the regulatory situation as well. You haven't touched on that just yet. I mean, I know that that's one of the sort of the primary hurdles that people look at as being something that's sort of in the way a little bit for crypto in general to be successful over the next 5-10 years. I mean, a lot of people say that the next 5-10 years or even less than that are make or break on whether or not it can be sort of viable. And how I suppose the made in America kind of thing that you're talking about is related to that. Talk about the getting over the regulatory issues as well.
Well, we've got a couple things there. First of all, there's no law that stops any one of us from starting our own currency. I dealt with that back in 2008 and had many, many years of success, including the invitation to testify about it in Congress. And so anybody can start their own currency. There's no law that prevents us from doing that. Anybody can start a crypto mine. Anybody can trade or barter or exchange value with a neighbor any way they like. And so when you start putting these things together, now you've got gray areas and crossover into this new question of, is it a security? Is it a utility? We're a clone of Litecoin, which was kind of a derivative of Bitcoin. And so I tell people, look, we filled out all the same paperwork that Satoshi filled out when he launched Bitcoin. And it's been very clearly stated today that Bitcoin is not a security. And so the challenge is that the winds are ever shifting in the realm of government oversight and regulatory requirements. What I can tell you right now is that I think part of the reason that we've been very successful is the new administration coming in has made it clear that we're going to back off a little bit and try to get the United States to become a leader in the cryptocurrency space. There's no reason why we can't. We just need to make it a little easier, a little less stressful for entrepreneurism to flourish inside of the industry. And so, first of all, we always have to keep an eye on it. We want to make sure that we're not breaking any laws, even though those laws are constantly shifting. We encourage people to always do their own research as far as tax obligations, because that's usually a big place where the rubber hits the road on regulation and compliance. But as far as people being able to barter with each other any way they like, using whatever they want, there's no law in any state that prevents them from doing that, even with crypto. Some states are a lot more friendly than other states. But definitely do your own research, come to your own conclusions. And if you're ever uncomfortable getting involved in something, either from a risk perspective or a compliance or a tax, then always, seek professional advice from a licensed person.
Yeah. So another problem cryptocurrencies face is the uptake. Also, people, once you start mentioning blockchain digital wallets, then you lose people. You've got a program in place that I know you want to talk about that is related to Texitcoin that is hopefully going to help with that. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, we call it the downtown digital dollars, and it's the manifestation of a digital asset used for this age-old idea of community currency. But before we get into that, I think it's important to encourage people to realize where the confusion and the skepticism and the hesitation comes from. It's really born out of a couple different things. First of all, when crypto came out in the early days, it was most engaged by gray and black markets. And that was a really tough thing because now all of a sudden people are saying, isn't crypto the stuff that like drug dealers and money launderers use? And the answer, of course, is yes. They use it because it exists, outside of the banks. And so, sure, just like, any other tool can be used for good or for bad, crypto's got that same thing. But that's really where it started. And that I think, kind of gave it a bad rap at the very beginning. The next part of that is I really want people to think of cryptocurrency not as a scam or as an investment opportunity, but as a financial technology. And if you think of it like a PayPal or a Venmo or a Zelle or a Cash App or any one of these, digital elastic money things, you say, okay, it's just a way of sending zeros and ones from one person to another.
Yeah.
The only difference, and this is the part that's mind-blowing and should cause everyone to pause for a moment and at least consider it. Take the blinders off just a little bit. We can exchange value with each other without having to go through a bank. And I don't know about you, but a lot of people that I know have had a PayPal account frozen or a credit card merchant service account closed and money frozen, or some sort of thing where they're dealing with it and they're scratching their head and saying, I'm not a drug dealer, I'm not a money launderer, and now my money's frozen.
Yep.
And that's a frustrating experience. When I was manufacturing copper coins, my credit union closed my account. I said, for what? I'm not even dealing with gold and silver. I'm exclusively making copper coins. Unfortunately, it's on our list of service providers that we do not banking for. Okay. No banking services for copper manufacturers. We don't do non-ferrous metals. I don't even know what that means. But apparently I'm now in the same category of financially unbanked as drug dealers and money launderers.
Yeah.
And that's a frustrating thing. And so imagine we've got this technology that allows us to exchange value. It's not easy. It's not simple. And it's a little scary because there aren't any chargebacks. If you forget your password, it's gone. If somebody hacks your account, you can't walk down to Chase and get them to put all the money back. Yep. So it's kind of like, the Wild West of money and banking. But it does allow us to have unstoppable money. We can exchange any amount, anytime, day or night, almost for free, almost instantaneously. And we don't have to go through a gatekeeper to do that. And so if you're someone that's ever been frustrated with a bank or some sort of merchant service provider, crypto creates an alternative and a solution for that kind of thing. So how do we get people to engage it? How do we get people to stop thinking about it in a scary, this is where hackers and bad people dwell, and think of it more in terms of we've got a tool that can save our community some money and help keep cash here in town. And that's what the value proposition is of a community currency. And there are thousands of them circulating right now all over the United States. I'm here in McKinney, Texas. I didn't even know that McKinney, Texas has its own community currency. It's called the downtown dollars. And there are 25,000 downtown dollars that are spent every year across 200 businesses. It means that there's almost no economic impact whatsoever of the downtown dollar program. Why? First, nobody knows about it. Second, it's paper. It's like a gift card coupon that nobody knows how to use. Nobody knows where to get them or how to use them. And so what if a guy comes along that knows how to get a community currency working and going, that shows us how we can do it with a digital tool that's built on a blockchain that's made in America? We've got all the right things there to engage the community in this non-scary kind of startup friendly way. Yeah. And what we get with cryptocurrency that we've never had with any other type of community currency is metrics. We get reporting. We get the analytical data that allows us to see how much money goes in and how many times it moves around the community before it's cashed out and goes off to someplace else. We get to see the velocity of that money. We get to see how much economic impact that money has. And we get to see it in the most transparent and beautiful way so that the whole town can see our money at work. And that's a really cool thing. So that's the Downtown Digital Dollar Program. It's coming soon. We're in beta testing right now. We're almost ready to roll out our pilot. And it'll be very exciting to see how it performs as it compares to the traditional downtown dollars that McKinney has.
And is it in this? The beta testing is happening in McKinney, Texas.
Well, we were first going to roll out Gonzales, Texas, which is kind of a little town in the middle of nowhere, and that would give us kind of both ends of the spectrum. Our solution installed at a tiny town with little economic activity, versus McKinney, which is the largest downtown cultural district in the state of Texas, that's got events happening almost every weekend. There's something going on. So a huge economic activity opportunity. Yeah. And so we like the idea of looking at it from both the big and the small. The good news about the small towns is that they're really ready to roll out the red carpet for us as we come in with something that's designed to help stir economic activity in town. The larger towns might have more red tape to work through. But again, the concept of helping keep money local is appealing so far as we've found across the board. And so whether that's McKinney or Frisco or Allen or some other city in the state of Texas, we don't know where we'll be able to brag about it first, but we know that it works everywhere.
And this would be Texitcoin that would be the digital currency? Or
Texitcoin is the foundation. You got to think about the TXC blockchain as the infrastructure that processes the transactions, that keeps a record of the balances, who has what. So we're talking about building the infrastructure in Texas. What we build on top of that could have any name, could be used anywhere. So the idea is to build a powerful, strong mining infrastructure that any city in Texas or anyone across the world could use to build a layer 2, a token on top of. So in McKinney, we'll call it the downtown digital dollars. In Gonzales, we might call it the come in token. It could have different names in different places, but it'll be built on the TXC blockchain, the Made in America blockchain.
Got it. All right. So if people want to learn more about this, if you're a city out there, a community out there, and they'd like to contact you about this and possibly try it, what's the information that they need, Bobby?
Yeah, check us out at texitcoin.org. We're still very new. We're still very small. We are about 1.5% of the way to our mine building goal. Our goal is to put together a mine that's 100 million mega hash. You don't need to worry about exactly what that means. Just think it's big. It's big, it's decentralized, it's well fragmented and distributed across the state of Texas so that it's reliable, so that people, developers can have confidence building on top of our network. So we've got a long way to go. So we're not really ready to rush out and bring everyone on. Our network is still small, but we're off to a great start. And you can learn more and keep up with our social medias at Texitcoin online or texitcoin.org on the website.
All right, great. Bobby Gray of Texitcoin. Great to have you on From the Ground Up.
Thanks so much for having me, John.